Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the book reviews. I'm hoping everything's going okay. Hope it's getting better with each time you're watching these. You're improving your intelligence, you're improving your skills. Maybe that you are investing in getting the book for yourself. I'm not trying to advertise, that's not the whole point of this, but it's just a way to kind of, take what I'm reading and kind of just, we're talking about it, discussing about it, and, it's good for that to have that discussion for everybody, and it kind of changes your mindset, sometimes your behavior, sometimes your intellect. Depends on what you're aiming for, maybe your attitude, and just kind of being a well-rounded human being. So today I have an interesting book. It's on being logical, and it's by D.Q. McInerny. That's how you would say it. By virtue of that name, I'm sorry. But being logical. Um, you know, the book is it's not a very big book. It was written in 2004. And there's a lot of information about this. If you ever take a logic class, if you go to a junior college or university, they might want you to take like a philosophy class or something like that, which I highly recommend you do. But they teach you a little bit about kind of how you understand the logical ways of dealing with things, and we're going to discuss some of the same terminology that they did in this book. And so this book really it's a concise and accessible introduction to the principles of logic. And the book is designed to help readers improve their critical thinking skills and understand the structure of a logical argument or reasoning. And that's kind of a good thing everybody should develop and have, because you should be a critical thinking. It doesn't matter what job or what you're doing in life. If you're not a critical thinker, you're not going to think well. And you might think that, I'm okay right now. Yeah, but you're not done with your life yet. You haven't had all the experiences. You haven't experienced everything in life. So it's just a way to kind of maybe to back up your argument. And we're going to talk about that as well. So let's define what logic is. Logic. Logic is about clear and effective thinking. That's it. Clear and effective thinking. And it's a science, but it's also an art. It's very objective and subjective at the same time. And you're probably thinking, how can that be? We're going to discuss that. People are smart, but we do not always shine in a way that makes us seem that way. We are judged on how we speak, right? And we don't use the same language as formal writing. When we're writing something, we don't write like we speak. So the author of this, DQ, thinks that logically we're missing from American education system. The American education system does not teach us very much logic. I guess it depends on what classes you're taking. I'm a math person, so I love logic. I'm built off logic. If you're a science person, you're probably built off logic. Maybe you're a humanities, maybe you're history. Okay, you might not see the logic into it, but maybe there is a lot of logic in history, by the way. Maybe music. I don't know. I'm not a musician, so I don't know a whole lot about the logic in there, if there is logic. But, speaking as a mathematician, I love logic, and I build off logic. So, I don't have a lot of information to say anymore about that stuff. So, logic and language are very inseparable. And how facts are related to the real world of ideas. What a fact versus an opinion. A fact is based on solid evidence, and opinions based on my feeling. And every situation is unique. Everything is, to a certain extent, unique to a certain individual. It's really the attention of the truths in the facts that you gather. And you're trying to get your facts straight. When you want to make a nice, clear argument, you want to have your facts stated, and they have to be backed up by evidence. We're going to talk about that. So, it really comes to our experience as well. But everybody's experience is different from our own. We might have the same experience of going get our driver's test, but the emotion follows. Maybe somebody's giving their driver's test, they're very excited. Hey, I have no problem. I'm done. Maybe somebody else is like, okay, they're very nervous and stuff like that. So it's the emotion part too that comes into that. So we tend to favor our own ideas, our own experiences, right? That shapes us to who we are. But there's 3 components to human knowledge, right? 1 is objective facts, 2 is ideas, and 3 is the words we apply to them. So objective facts, idea, and the words that we apply to them. So we want to match our words to our ideas. So we hear the word truth. What is truth? How do you define truth? We define prove. How do you prove something? What's your way of proving? And we have what we call a confirmation bias, is that we believe that it is. A confirmation bias is that if it waddles like a duck, quacks like a duck, it is a duck. You ever heard that expression before? Confirmation bias. That means if it has all those characteristics, it has to be that. So we have to be very effective in communication. Communication is the key, because if you're not an effective communicator, your words and your feelings, your logic is not going to define. It's not going to get out. And so it takes a lot of skill too for this. And you don't want to assume anything, because once you're assuming, you're assuming that your audience knows your background. You're assuming that the audience knows what you are talking about, what statements you're going to use. And you're probably thinking about that. That doesn't mean anything. Well, you're assuming that the audience, the people that you're talking to, understands your meaning of proof, of truth. And statements, if you make a statement, statements are either true or they're false. Statements are true or false. And we sometimes take it for granted that an audience is aware of our background information that is necessary for our correct understanding of the subject we are speaking about. So don't assume without proper evidence. And you have to speak in complete sentences. Sometimes when you're not speaking in complete sentences, people are not getting what you're saying. You're acting too vague or too ambiguous. And that's part of the reason that you have to speak well, is that you want to make sure that your words are getting out in a clear, concise way. And so it's like algebra. Algebra is a language. Math's a language. You have A to B to C. And if A and B are equal and B and C are equal, that means A is equal to C. The language is that chain. And so you also want to avoid, when you're talking, avoid double negatives. We say this all the time in life. If you think about, when you're going through the day, pay attention to how you're speaking. Even when you're talking to your friends or talking to your boss, talking to your parents, siblings, think about how you're speaking, because we do this all the time. It is not unlikely. It is not uncommon. Double negatives. We do that a lot. And so you have to gear your language toward your audience. You have to keep things simple in life when you're speaking to people sometimes, because they don't know you very much. Maybe they do know you, but they don't know how you're feeling. Everybody's experience is different than your own. And you have to adjust your vocabulary. Sometimes when people want to speak really intelligently, for example, a lawyer can't keep lawyering his vocabulary to the general audience, because we're not going to get it. We're not lawyers. We don't know the definitions of a lot of that stuff, what he's saying. And you have to kind of put a different hat on when you are walking with somebody else, because you can't always keep being a lawyer all the time, or a scientist, or a judge, or a police officer. You have, or a mathematician. I can't just keep throwing math lingo at people and say, "Oh, you're going to understand that." No, I don't. Okay, and so you want to avoid vague and ambiguous language as well. Like I was saying a little bit ago, being vague means you leaving the person to wonder, or sorry, wander, and it's very broad. Vague is very broad. You don't know what you're meaning there. And ambiguous is also a Latin word to mean kind of like what's to wonder about. They're very similar. Vague is that you don't have enough information. Ambiguous means it can be anything. And so be careful using those kind of words. And so people don't like music like that. People don't like music like that. That's what? That's very vague. What do you mean? What do you mean? What people and what music are you talking about? And so, for example, like words like love and equal, fairness, good, evil, justice, and equality. All those words that I just mentioned have a lot of what we call ambiguity of them. We don't know people use love all the time. What does love mean to you? Well, do you love your mother like you love your friends? Do you love your pet like you love your girlfriend or boyfriend? What is love? It's very vague, or very ambiguous, I should say. You should always be straightforward with your language, though. Be straightforward. Don't be direct. Don't be indirect. Sorry. And avoid excusive language. Excusive language is like does not state directly what the speaker or writer has in their mind. It's hard to kind of relate to people sometimes because they don't have always the thinking background to know what you're talking about to them. And so you want to keep it simple and try to don't mask your terms. Don't twist your terms either. Be very direct. And logic is mostly about seeking out the truth. So logic is something that we use to seek out the truth in a logical, in a structural way, I should say. So we use statements as true or false, right? And are those statements true? Well, how do you know those statements are true? How do you test them? Well, what do? We have what we call, evidence, right? We have evidence, and not all evidence is substantial or solid. And so you have to be careful. And sometimes people fall in the trap of contradicting themselves. We do this all the time. What I want you to do is take a day and just think about what you're saying, or listen to what you're saying, and see if you hear these words come up. Because as people, we love to contradict ourselves. And it's funny. And there's a difference between theoretical versus practical, right? Theoretically means I don't use this kind of stuff. Practically, you do. And if you don't know what a contradiction is, it's like saying that I'm a really cool person, but my friend over here says I'm not a cool person. Well, you're just contradicting yourself because you said that you are. And there's a lot of principles here. So we have a principle of you're excluding the middle. What that means is that you're between the being and not being. There's no middle ground. You're either right or you're wrong. You can't be both. There's a lot of this, what we call a principle of sufficient reasoning. You have to have evidence for what you're doing. And it's kind of like, it's impossible for something to be both and not be the same. So is it possible to be right or wrong? No, there's not. You can't be both. You can't be right and wrong. You can't be true and false. You can't be 3 and 4. You can't be 17 and 18. There's no way. So you have to pay attention to that stuff. And don't bother with the facts. As people, we rationalize things a lot. Rationalize is we try to be negative all the time. It's amazing that our minds want to play the negative game more than the positive game, and we try to rationalize things. And rationalize things as that's, well, you know what? It's okay to rob a bank. Well, I need to rob a bank. I need the money. Oh, don't worry about that. I need the money though. And that's the rationalization of it. You're trying to make something negative into a positive to a certain extent. That's probably one bad example, but we do that all the time. Think about how many times you rationalize things, that you want to take something negative and make it to a positive, and says that's the right way of going. You know, it's okay to, oh, that guy gave me the finger when I was making an illegal turn, and I cut him off. But you know, I had to make that illegal turn, and maybe, well, deep down is that you don't. You just were in a hurry, so you're going to try to rationalize it. And is there a gray area? Well, a gray area is when the truth cannot clarify be established. People become fixated on this all the time. They think that, you know, they think there's always a gray area, you know, that middle ground. No, I don't think there is. There's rare occasions that there are gray areas. And they get kind of annoyed with that. So logic, it always seems good to define your terms. So when you're speaking to somebody, you want to define, what do you mean by truth? What do you mean by being good, being evil? And that's something that you have to decide for yourself, but you also have to have the other person agree on too, with evidence, by the way. So we have to define things. And when you have an argument's a good thing to have. An argument can be good if you have both people respecting each other, and it doesn't get physical, or it doesn't get vocal or loud, the tone, or the language, you know, cussing words and stuff like that. You can talk better than that. You don't have to cuss. It's amazing that in Hollywood right now, a lot of Hollywood shows have the F word all the time, and I get sick and tired of hearing that, because I think it's just for show. You know, for show. It's like, oh, I can speak bad language. Okay, bad language doesn't make you better. It just, you're sounding dumb to me, because you're just using this language to, I don't know, make yourself more much more on top. I don't know. Speak better. So when you have an argument is only as good as the statements of which you are composed, and statements in turn will only be as good as the terms you're having. So remember, the statements is true or false. An argument is only good as what your evidence is attaining to, is what you're talking about. So let's go over what an argument is. So let's say you have an argument about, let's say two people are going, one person's going out with a friend, and this is the person that's going out with this person's friend. This person says, you know what, you guys are friends, yes, and we really like each other. So, and maybe that person didn't ask if this person can go out with this person's friend. And so this person didn't ask for this one. So out of respect, it is good to ask this person, the friend, to go out with their friend, right? It's kind of general. But the argument is, well, one is that we are best friends. We should communicate, right? We don't hide things. Okay, you don't hide things. That's one thing. We don't lie to each other. That's two things. So right there, that person, they both agree that those two things are 100%. So right there, this person's in default. This person's in default because, one, he's hiding things that they both agree to. So he just contradicted their relationship. So that's kind of what an argument is that you're basing the evidence that you already deciphered and decided equally into that conversation. And so you have to have what we call evidence, which is premises. Premises are the evidence. And then you have to base that on the conclusion. And so it's really interesting, as you know, people go through life and they don't think about those things, and that's kind of where it goes from there. So every argument is composed of two things: premises and conclusions. If the premises or evidence are not solid, the conclusion will not be supportive. So if you have false evidence, your conclusion will not work. Remember, a statement can be true or false. It is rare to have multiple conclusions. It is rare to have multiple conclusions. So it's that comical logical thing that you have to think about. So let's back to this. Premises, operations are like, you want to look for premises are like because, since, and account of. So we are friends, we are best friends because there's your evidence, because we share everything together. We don't lie to each other. We tell each other. We trust each other, stuff like that. So that because is your premises. So therefore, we are best friends. We are best friends because we don't lie to each other. Therefore, we are best friends. See kind of what I'm trying to say. So because or since is like your evidence, your premises. Therefore, or thus, or so is kind of like your conclusions. And so we do this all the time when we speak, and you got to understand how you're speaking too, because remember, people judge you on how you speak. If you speak well and concise, people look up to that. They trust you more. Well, trust you, I guess, you that. So we like to make predictions. Predictions are not 100% solid. I'm gonna make a prediction that you're getting this information across. Okay, I don't know. I'm not you. And it's really what information is based off of. And we do this in science, we do this in math, we do this in law sometimes. And you want to avoid negative sentences, by the way, or negative statements. We say that all people are bad. Well, Bill is not bad. Well, there you go. You have to be very careful with your wording. And so when you say all, or for everybody, you're saying in a general statement of everybody. You have to be careful, because when you say all people are bad, well, Bill and Renee are not bad. So what did you just do? You committed a fallacy. So you can say some people are bad. Okay, then these two people are bad. So you have to be very careful with your language you use. And we do this all the time. All, some. And you got to be careful. So the summary of this book that we're talking about, being logical, is that you got to know your people. You got to know your audience. Logic is an art and a science. It's a structural way of thinking, of getting towards the truth. And you have to define your terms, your language. You have to define what you're saying. And there's a lot of illogical thinking. Illogical thinking means you're making things up. So illogical thinking is like skepticism, being narrow-mindedness, your emotions in argument are coming to play. Your emotions. Emotions are an individual feeling, by the way. And common sense. Common sense is very hard for me, because I don't think common sense is, everybody has that same sense. Many people should know how to use a blinker on their car, but it's common sense to use your blinker, right? But does everybody use their blinker all the time? That should be a common sense, right? Is it common sense to treat everybody with respect? It's not, because people don't do it. I think common sense is education. And that's why I have a problem with common sense. There's a lot of fallacies, and fallacies are mistaking in reasoning. We have a lot of mistakes in our reasoning. They're called fallacies. And it's our structure in an argument. And so, you're begging the question is one fallacy. So maybe you're just, you're asking a question, but you're kind of trimming around the bush. You're trimming around the bush. That means you're not getting towards the question. You're kind of veering off the question. False assumptions. We do this all the time. That's a false assumption. We don't know if that person's good or not. Define good. Well, he's a good student. He's a good lawyer. He's a good teacher. He's a good parent, a good person. First, you have to define what person is, good is, and you don't know. We're just making an assumption. And so there's all kinds of them, and we have to avoid conclusions. There's a lot of fallacy about avoiding conclusions. We conclude that since Renee cheated on somebody, all girls are bad, or everybody she talks to is the same way. We do this all the time because we try to make one conclusion, but we make it for everybody that's associated with that person. It's interesting. We generalize too much. We generalize way too much. And everything has a specific case. So, very interesting book, like I said, but I'm a math person as well, so obviously this is one of my good books. It's not that big. I paid like $12 for it. It might be cheaper now. I don't know. But very interesting. And this book is what? A 2004. So you're like, oh my God, that's 2004. Well, yeah, but remember, even though it has some outdated stuff, it's still reasonable. Everything we talked about is pretty straight. It's pretty common today. Common. So, interesting book. I'm hoping that you will take advantage of maybe picking this up and reading about a little bit of logic. Take a philosophy class in school. It's really good. And focus on what you're saying every day. And hope that's all you need to know. So, hope I see you in the next one.